Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Kingdom of Dreams podcast. Today, my guest is Sarah Bromberg. She's a music supervisor of an upcoming documentary. Well, it's actually coming out tomorrow called The Honorable Shyne on Hulu. It's deals with the story of hip hop artist Shyne and the murder trial that took place, and now his journey, how he's sort of come to where he is, involving story of J-Lo and Diddy from late 1990s, and how he went on trial because of certain misconceptions. At least that's what the documentary portrays. But I had a great conversation with Sarah. Being a music supervisor, we talked about what's her role in terms of rights to the music, the kind of stuff that she has to go through in work and life and all that, and her journey to be where she is now in her upcoming and future projects. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Sarah, who is the music supervisor on The Honorable Shyne, which comes out tomorrow, November 18th on Hulu. Pleasure to have you. Thank you for, um, you know, coming on to talk about I think it's a series or documentary from Hulu.
It's a
Uh,
documentary or film. Yeah.
yeah, The Honorable Shyne. And
hmm
before we get started on that, I would love to know who's Sarah and what does she do?
Well, I'm Sarah Bromberg.
Yeah.
I'm
Just,
I'm a
just your
music
story.
supervisor. What?
Yeah.
I'm a music supervisor. I've been doing this job for a little over 10 years. I started in commercials
Mm-hmm.
and then made my way to television and film. And I love my work. It's a really hard job. It's extremely taxing, very mentally taxing, emotionally taxing, but I love it. I love doing the work. I love being part of the process. And yeah, I live in New Orleans, which is rare for a music supervisor. I am from here originally, and I live here with my husband and my son, and I absolutely love this town and would like to live here forever. Um, and I just enjoy being apart, separate from industry. And like in New Orleans, it's just a different speed, it's a different
Mm,
lifestyle. We really put a lot of stock in having fun and eating well and celebrating. And those are all things that I deeply love. I think probably because I grew up here and that's what I grew up doing. So yeah, that's me.
that's awesome. Well, sounds like you've got your entire life planned out.
Uh, I mean, ideally, you never know what life's going to throw at you.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
it
E-
could go
Every, e-
left, but this is what I'd like for it to be.
well, every day it goes left when you wanted to go right and vice versa, right? That's just how it is. And
Exactly.
and in our industry, it's also like that too. And New Orleans to me, when it first came to my radar was when Katrina happened. Right?
Yeah.
This was 2004 or
Hi.
five. I don't remember.
Yeah,
Were you there
2005.
at the time?
I was actually living in New York at the time. I went to school in New York and then I stayed. I was there for 18 years. I moved back in 2013. So I wasn't here. My family was still here. My friends were still here. And New Orleans itself, especially when you're from here, is like a family member. So it was a really, really hard time. Even if you didn't live here at the time, the heartbreak surrounding it like permeated everyone who has had their soul touched by this town, which is a lot of people. So yeah, I wasn't here, but I went through it and was traumatized by it, though I wasn't here. Um, and seeing the recovery has been really, really incredible. It's been a really, really long road, a very slow road. The city was deeply changed in many, many ways that I don't know could have been predicted because of that storm.
Right,
Some ways for the worse, some ways for the better. And I'm proud of where we are today, but we're still rebuilding
right. Yeah,
to
no,
this
it
day.
was it was definitely, a devastating. I remember, it took the government what, like 3, 4 weeks to respond. I still remember that very vividly. But,
Yeah, Kanye West
yeah.
got on that
And
telethon and said
that's
George
right.
Bush hates black people, and he wasn't wrong.
That's right. And I was So I'll tell you a little bit, and we're going to talk about the Honorable Shine. So I love music, right? Like I love any type of music, mainly movie scores, right? Like
Yeah,
just Hans Zimmer, John Williams, Jerry Goldsmith, Alan Silvestri. I never grew up with songs as per that much. I mean, I knew Mariah Carey, I knew Whitney Houston, J-Lo, Michael Jackson, Elvis. But in terms of like the other world, like rap and reggae and all that, I was never familiar with it. Um,
really.
yeah, I'd never. It's something I never got into until I would say I probably not still am into it, but I have heard a lot of songs over the last 4 or 5 years. So my familiarity with that story was absolutely zero
Huh.
until I saw the trailer, and I haven't
Yeah.
seen the film yet. And I was baffled about this story of how this one guy went through so much and to be where he is today.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
you
an
know,
incredible story.
it is. How did you come on board on this story?
So the film was produced, production services were done by a company called Color Creative. Color Creative is a sister company to the company that I work at, which is called Radio.
Mm,
And so when they produce on a film and they need a music supervisor, they generally will reach out to us as we have a music supervision team that is virtually in-house for them as we are sister companies. And I worked on a lot of projects with our sister companies, so they're familiar with my work and they know how I get things done. And so they were happy to bring me on board. I actually have a team. We have a team of four, including myself. And so each one of us touched this film in some way or another because we always work at a team, but I took the lead on it. And so, yeah, I was brought on very early, actually years ago, literally, because this project has been years in the making. So yeah, that's how I came to the project.
And as a music supervisor, I have a sense what a music supervisor does, but for the audience, what are your day-to-day, ta operations tasks? Like what's different about what music supervisor does versus a composer, a conductor,
Yeah.
arranger?
So the music supervisor is involved in any music that you hear that was licensed music, so pre-existing music that exists in the world and then was put against picture in the film, creating original music for the film. And if there's any music performed on camera, we're involved in that. So basically, all the music in a film or TV show that is not original score, that is something that the music supervisor is across, is helping develop, is creatively working on, and is also handling the budget for. So I always say that music supervision is, a lot of people think music supervision is just creative. It's just pulling a song and putting it in and say, there, it's in, I'm all done. It's very much not just that. It's 50% creative and 50% business. So clearing the song, licensing the song, managing the budget, making sure that you can afford things, making sure that things can be used legally. That's all very much part of the job as well. So when we're brought into a project, depending on when we're brought in, it can be as early as in development or in script phase, or it can be all the way into post when everything's already shot and everything's already done, and we're just putting music in after the picture has already been created.
Right. Well, thank you for explaining that. In relation to Honorable Shine, the actual story when it started, do you remember watching news or sort of talking about it with your friends and
Oh
at that
yeah.
time?
At that time, oh yeah, yeah. This was a huge story. Shine was a breaking artist. He was a developing artist. And I definitely was into hip hop at the time. Everybody was, it was sort of just a huge cultural moment at that
Yeah.
time. And those artists were all over MTV. I was an MTV baby. So, I grew up on MTV. I grew up on music videos. So, yes. And I was of course, of aware of what went down at the nightclub. That shooting, that was a huge story at the time. It was in the press every single day. So yes, I was very aware of it. J-Lo was also at that time a big star, and she was involved in it as well. And so yeah, that news was everywhere. That was permeating culture at the time. If we had had social media at that time, it would have lit up social media. It was everywhere. So very much remember that story. Very much remember Shine. And his biggest single, Bad Boys, was definitely something that was in my rotation
Yeah.
as well then. So yeah, very familiar with the story. And I didn't know what came of him. So, when this project came to me, I was just as shocked as I'm sure many who see this film will be as well, to see his journey. It's really, like I said, it's really incredible. And I too was enthralled to find out all the places, all the stops that he made along the road to get to where he is today.
Yeah. At the time when it happened, I mean, everybody has speculations, right? And from a from a law standpoint, nobody's guilty until proven, no matter what anybody thinks,
Right. Of course.
right? But at the time when this happened, you and your friends or family, what did people think? Because I think Diddy was involved in some capacity too. Like, was Shine innocent at the time of the conversation? Was he set up, or was he just mis, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Just arrested wrongfully. Like it was just not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think there were definitely question marks around it. It seemed murky. It seemed suspicious, but there was a trial and there were verdicts. And so I think at the end of the day, most people took that at face value. And I think I was probably one of them. But it still always felt a little murky. There always felt like there was a sort of black hole around what really went down in that nightclub. And listen, I soon after that moved to New York and was also in nightclubs. And I know how crazy it is in there. There's people everywhere, bodies are pressed against each other. It didn't surprise me to think it wasn't clear who did what in there, because if you've ever been in a nightclub like that, you know that it is hard to tell what's going on. It's dark in there. There's people everywhere. I always, I think in the back of my mind kind of felt like I don't know what happened, but it's likely that most people don't know what happened, because it probably was dark in there, because it was crazy. I'm sure it was extremely chaotic. I'm sure people started running immediately. So yeah, there was always a little question mark around it for me.
Yeah. It's kind of like I remember it was probably much more grand scale because CNN was broadcasting it every single day, the O.J. Simpson trial, right? I
Hmm.
remember my dad used to watch it, and I just remember the whole thing, the gloves and everything. And then
Yep.
there was a series on FX, like a mini series. I don't I think what was his name? David Schwimmer was in it. Cuba
Hmm.
Gooding Jr., which was great. But these stories, I mean, when you talk, and now with what's going on with Epstein, well, what that was like 4 or 5 years ago, and now what's going
Hmm.
on with Diddy and J-Lo, and
Hmm.
well, allegedly J-Lo, they haven't talked about it yet. Is how, it's been what 25, 26 years, and how things kind of still keep happening, and you figure that you live in a country like United States, Canada, UK, where the laws are very strict, but somehow do you think people are still able to get away because they have power,
Yes.
um, from the things that they may have been convicted of?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen it time and time again, but a good lawyer is a good lawyer for a reason. They
Yeah,
know
that's
how
true.
to get in there and make jurors have a reasonable doubt, and that's really all they have to do. And that's why they get paid the big bucks. And who can pay them the big bucks but the rich and powerful? And so I think the system definitely ends up, for better or for worse, being rigged in that way, just because if you can afford a really good lawyer, then you can likely afford to find a way to put some reasonable doubt in even one juror's mind. And that's really all they have to do when you think about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And if you're poor, if you don't have money, then you can't afford that. And you may be very innocent. But if you don't have a good lawyer who knows how to put that reasonable doubt in the mind of a juror, then you're going to be convicted. And so the system, it's not fair. And I think it does favor those who have power and those who have money. I don't think every time they're able to
Yeah,
get
yeah.
off, but I definitely think we've seen it before and we'll see it again. That does happen.
Yeah. You reminded me when you were talking about, even creating doubt in one juror's mind. You reminded me of this film. It's one of my favorite films that came out in the 50s, 12 Angry Men.
Yep.
I don't know. Have you ever seen it?
I think I've seen it, yeah, a really long time ago.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I feel like I saw it when I was in theater school. It was one of those movies they had us watch
Yeah, because it takes place in one room and
in one room.
it's
Yeah.
literally about one juror
Yeah.
who is saying not guilty, and the whole film is him trying to convince everybody else. And it kind of
Yeah, because it's
reminded
like
me
a
of
play,
those.
which I think is why we watched it,
Yeah,
because it does take
yeah.
place in one room. So yeah, it's coming back to me. Yeah,
You should watch it again. Great
I
film. But
should. You're right. I
go
love old
going
movies too.
going back to Shine's film, in terms of your role, of, as a music supervisor, if you can think of one particular example where things were extremely challenging, whether it was just, the toll of the workload, or trying to find rights to certain music, and there was this involved and that politics involved.
The whole film was very challenging, honestly.
Okay. Okay.
And
Dude,
it starts at, and I have worked on many projects with hip hop from the 90s, 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. And during that time, hip hop was new, it was still developing. They were still figuring out how to do the rights, and especially when it came to samples, which hip hop is, it was started with samples. It's based in samples. That's the root of hip hop, is samples. And so there have always been samples in hip hop, but initially they were never papered correctly. They were never cleared.
yeah,
Were a lot of lawsuits that happened. And so as soon as I see, okay, this film takes place in this time period or is using this time period of music, alarm bells start going off in my head, because I know that it is notorious that some of those songs either are really hard to clear or cannot be cleared. And so from the very beginning, this was something I brought to the producer's attention. And I very early on was telling them, you need to get me the list of songs that you're considering as soon as possible so that we can start researching them, because it's going to
sure.
take at least 6 months to get to the bottom of everything. And that was actually ended up being an underestimate. It didn't took longer than 6 months to get to the bottom of a lot of these songs. And um, when you're working in this time period, you also end up reaching out to people who have been betrayed. They've been wronged by the industry. They've been stolen from, and they are very rightfully so angry and distrustful of anyone that they feel is coming from the industry. And I've dealt with this many times over. And that was no exception on this project. There were certain songs that we wanted to use where, in researching the rights, we ended up finding a producer or someone who wrote on the song who then subsequently was taken off, or wasn't paid, or never got what they were supposed to get from their contract. And when we reach out, they're not nice, and
Yeah,
I understand why. I know where they're coming from. I respect their experience, but I didn't do that to them. And
yeah,
it's hard to receive responses like that of people who are really angry and will shut you down without hearing you out. And so yeah, there were several songs that I had to sort of break the director and producer's hearts about, and just say, guys, we're not going to be able to use this song. It's not happening. And so uh, every step of it was hard for at a baseline for those reasons. Every step
Yeah.
of working through these copyrights was really hard. And we had to go to battle with some publishers who felt that they had the rights to music that our research showed they did not. And we're going up against major publishers, they like we were saying earlier, they have lawyers. So,
Yeah.
and I'm saying go dig out files from 25 years ago and let me know what your copyright says. So that's a long process and it's a fight. And so some of those battles we were victorious in and some of them we lost.
Yeah. So, the artists that you reach out to, it's kind of like in docs, um, trying to get permission for archival footage, and you have to have a
Yes.
lawyer. I mean, I've gone through that process as well, and it's
Hmm.
very, very tedious, right?
Yeah.
There's for the artists that you were reaching out to directly, like, was there, and you don't have to answer this. I'm not trying to get into the nitty-gritty of the dollar value and anything, but was there like any kind of monetary, thing offered to them that you'll get this, or was it just like, can we just use it and that's it?
Well, no, everybody gets paid. I mean, we licensed the music. Like we did
Yeah.
not get the music for free. But there were some instances with songs that the director and producers really loved where we discussed, I tried to explain to them why this, you know, person was so angry. I was like, it looks like this is a remix of the song. He wrote the original. He got booted off
Oh, I see.
writers for the remix, even though he should be a writer. And so we did discuss, is there a way for us to do some sort of direct payment or make up for um, where they
Money
feel
lost at the time. Yeah.
wronged? And so we started to discuss that, but as I got further into some of the records, I realized that, he wasn't the only one and it was more complicated than that. And it just wasn't going to make sense. But I have had that happen before in other films, where we've done some sort of workaround or direct payment, or we've made it up to that writer in one way or another, where they felt compensated and supported and they felt comfortable, and we were able to move forward with those uses. It just didn't happen on this
Yeah.
production.
And just to kind of deviate from Honorable Shine in general, we all have times in life when it's like this, right? That you go a high point, you're happy, and then rock bottom,
Yeah.
and then back. It's just the way it is. And in your life, whether it's professionally or personally, whatever you were comfortable with sharing, what was that one moment where you felt this is it? Like, I'm done. Like, life is just like, the most difficult thing in the world, or this profession, I'm giving up. Like, has there been ever a moment that you can sort of recall and talk about?
I have those moments all the time.
All the time. I know I go through them all the time, but I had to put a question in a way where it seemed, not that life
Yeah.
is terrible, but just the way it is.
Yeah. No. Um, I definitely well, this generally this year has been a really crazy year just work-wise. And I definitely have had moments. I had several on this film where I just thought like I'm not gonna be able to get through this, like I'm gonna have to quit. I'm just gonna have to quit. Not just this film, I'm just gonna have to quit music supervision because, but I do tend to be, I have a flair for the dramatic. So maybe not rightfully so. I do always push through, but I do often feel at the end of my rope with this job just because it is very, like I said, it's mentally and emotionally
Yeah.
taxing. And sometimes I don't believe in myself enough, and I forget that I always do find a way to make it work. And so I reach these points, and I never want to let anybody down. And especially on a project like this, where it's so important to my sister company, to my colleagues that work there that I have such respect for. I always want to deliver absolutely the best product. And so sometimes I feel like if I can't, then I might as well just quit rather than figuring out a workaround and knowing that I will eventually get there. I think like I should just step back because it's not going to be perfect and I hate to deliver anything less than perfect. Um, but the good news is I have a really amazing team around me, both at our sister company, Talitha Watkins, who was the main producer on the film. She was an amazing support. And then also the head of my division, Stephanie Diaz-Matos, she is such an amazing support with me. And so when I got to that point, when I really sort of was like, oh my God, um, I don't know how we're going to get through this. They got on the phone with me and we just put everything on the table, where we're at, here are the complications, here's the point we have to get to. And we all worked together to get there. And they were an amazing support. And we did get through it. And then, of course, Stephanie was like, see, I told you, you have to stop doing that.
Yeah.
Like, I know,
Yeah. No,
one day
it's
I'll
hard.
remember. Hmm?
It's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard. It's a really hard business to be in. And because everybody's trying to climb the ladder, right? And
Yeah.
you're trying to climb it too. I appreciate you answering this, but let me ask you something else, if you don't mind. Um, going back, okay, so you always wanted to be music supervisor, I'm assuming, or somewhat
As
in the
soon as I
same realm.
found out what a music supervisor was, then I did, but I never knew what it was before that.
When was this? What year?
2007.
Okay.
Um,
So 18 years ago or 17 years ago. So
yeah.
that journey that you've had, right? Like, so we're always on that journey of trying to climb the ladder. It never ends because when it ends, then the purpose of life is pretty much done. But there's also the beginning phase, the first chapter where you're trying to take a leap to the second chapter and it's just not working. That door is not opening. And you don't have anything. Like right now where you are, at least you have a past, right? Like you
Yeah.
have all this work that you've done, so you can use that to move forward. But in that time, when you were in your early first couple of years, trying to knock that door, and you're like, I've done like 3 years of my leg work and nothing is happening. Was that ever a moment where you just completely felt like that's it, I'm done, I've giving up?
Yeah, I actually did. When I moved back to New Orleans from New York, I actually did I mean, I sort of said, okay, I don't have a job in New Orleans. I don't have a plan. I just want to move back home. And I said, I will figure it out when I get there. And I knew that music supervision was not there's no industry for that in New Orleans. So I had no expectation of continuing on with it. I thought I'll do something else in music. I will do something else completely. Maybe I'll leave this industry altogether. Um, and so at that point, I stepped away. I didn't think of it as quitting music supervision. I thought of it more as like I'm taking this leap to move to New Orleans and because that's just where I want to be and I'm gonna figure it out from there. And I just was very lucky that the job ended up following me here and I ended up being able to continue on the path um, without really a plan to. It just happened. It felt like I don't know, was pulling me back in somehow. So yeah, I actually did quit it. And I quit it to leave New York. I just was done with New York. I was exhausted living in New York.
Yeah.
Um, and I just wanted to come back here where my soul was. And somehow ended up still on this path and actually pushing it forward somehow
Yeah.
and developing.
I truly believe that, and the fact that you made that change without a plan and somehow it all worked. I truly believe that the reason things sometimes work, if not most of the time, is that when you put yourself in a completely uncomfortable spot that you are not accustomed to, you're bound to make decisions that you have never made before, and that will take you forward to the place where you want to be. Because if you're in that same bubble where you've tried 10 things over and over again, you're more likely going to get same results over and over again,
Yeah, I
right?
agree.
So I think that's a huge thing that you need to be. I'm not saying don't have a plan. Sometimes that's a good thing,
Yeah.
but sometimes to be blind is probably very important in order to find who you are. I truly believe
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I think I was a little bit lucky and it was like a little luck and a little talent and those things came together and delivered.
But do you believe in luck? I don't believe in luck.
I
I
do
think
believe
it's
in
I
luck.
think I no, but how do you find how do you get luck? Because you work hard. If you don't work hard, how are you going to be at the right place at the right time? That's luck.
That's
I
true.
can see that, right? Because if you're
That's
not
true.
working hard, if you're sitting in a chair, even if you get lucky, you're going to lose that opportunity because you're not working hard.
No, you're right. And that goes back to me not believing myself because I go like, well, I was just lucky, like I also was doing the, I was
Yeah, I
doing
think
it
it's
well, which I can't acknowledge about myself, but I
yeah,
was doing it well. And so I
it's
was
a
able to,
humbling thing to say, right? Like I'm
yeah,
lucky, I
it's very
get
hard
it.
for me to say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But no, that's great. Going back to I'm not trying to tie these two incidents, but with what's in the news the last few months, with
Yeah.
what's going on with Diddy and kind of going back to this film, when that news broke out, I think this was 3 months ago or 4 months ago when I don't, it was recently. Like when you guys were in that phase of almost finishing this film, what was that reaction like, from two standpoints, from obviously the news itself, and then how does that sort of tie into our film that is almost pretty much done? It's in post.
Yeah. I mean, um, we, like I said, we were working on this film for years. So
Yeah.
way before any of this news unfolded. And like I also said, I was researching these songs, um, but I was not clearing anything yet because they were still in production and there were still cuts were changing wildly between cuts. So I don't want to clear music until I have a good idea of what the real uses are going to be because the way the use plays can affect the fee. And so it's better to clear everything you need than to go back and re-clear things over and over again. So I was waiting, um, researching and waiting, researching, waiting. And then last year, when the lawsuit broke, I was, shook, as I'm sure everybody else was. And of course, one of my first thoughts was, how's this going to affect this film? Like I think, with everything going on with him, I don't know how he's going to want bad boy music to be portrayed. I don't know where his team's head is going to be at. Um, and then that was lawsuit was settled with Cassie and we sort of moved on. And I thought, okay, we're moving on. We're moving on. I don't think it's going to really affect the film. But then obviously things kept unfolding and more, it was a snowball, it kept building rather than going away. And so I personally, I was sort of split, I was excited because I thought like, oh, well, it's going to give more attention to this film. I think people are going to, talk
Yeah,
about it more. And of course, again, I want success for everyone involved because this
of
is our
course.
sister company and we want success for everybody that we work with. And then on the other side, I was thinking, God, I hope I'm going to be able to clear this music. What if Bad Boy says we're not clearing any music for Bad Boy? What if they're not okay with us using this stuff? What if they're not okay with this story being told? And so that worry grew with every piece of news that unfolded, with every new shocking thing that happened, with the video coming out, with the raids of his houses. And so, um, it was building and we were finishing. And so I was sort of like, we need to put the foot on the gas and get these clearances done, because we don't know what's coming next. Obviously this is
Yeah.
not, story is not done unfolding. And so I had this split reaction of, you know, heart for the film and the story that's being told and the importance of it, even more. It needed to be told. That, Shyne's side of the story needed to come out, and nerves about being able to deliver everything that the filmmakers wanted musically
Sure.
for this film. And some of the stuff um, was sung on camera. They have Barrington Levy in his interview. He sings part of the song on camera. So I was like, well, that has to get cleared. That
Right. Of
we
course.
have to be able to clear that. So yeah, it was a dual-sided reaction from me and my team. Um, Luckily, we did put our foot on the gas and we got everything cleared before the arrest. So we had all of our quotes and everything buttoned up before it really imploded. And it became clear that, he's going to be facing a trial and so much more is, this is a real implosion of an empire. Because after the raids, it was like, well, we don't know. Maybe they didn't find anything. We don't know what happened there. We have no idea what the government's doing. And that was when we were really pushing forward on finalizing the cut and finalizing the
Yeah.
music film.
Yeah, I mean, normally they don't release stuff because there's still investigation going on,
Yeah.
and who knows, even on Monday, something might unravel, or in 6 months something might unravel because
Oh yeah. I don't
there's a
think
lot of
it's
stuff going
done.
on.
Yeah, I don't think it's done unraveling. I think that more
Yeah.
seems like more and more will come out. And we're heading into a trial. So
Yeah,
a lot
and
will come
who
out
knows
there.
who knows whose names are gonna come up and whether those names are accurate or or being allegedly or accused of or
Exactly.
whatever. It's just crazy. We live in a world where I mean I this is going off topic, but I have absolutely zero faith in media and journalism today.
Yeah, it's
It's
definitely
just
a very scary time when it comes to that.
everybody is the first breaking news just for that you'll misreport, and it's just weird times. And when
Very.
journalism falls apart, societies completely collapse. I think that's where we're heading unless something is done about it, but it is what it is.
It is what it is. We can only control what we can control.
What we
That's
can go
my
exactly.
motto
Ex-
right now.
exactly. No reason to stress yourself over things you can't control. But the things that you can control is your future projects. At least
Yes.
what you would be working on. Is there something that you're able to discuss that you're working on or you will be working on that's coming out the next year or two or
Yeah,
just
I have a ton of projects coming out. I spent 2024 with my head down working on a lot, a lot. So the first thing that I have coming out, I'm really, really excited. Well, after Shine, of course, Shine comes out on the 18th,
November 18th? Yeah.
November 18th. So that's first and foremost. Very excited for the world to finally see that because, like I said, I have been working on that project for years. Um, and the next project is a film called One of Them Days. It's a
Okay.
scripted comedy starring Kiki Palmer and SZA.
Okay.
And it is coming out January 24th, 2025 in theaters. And it is absolutely hysterical. It is so good. I am extremely excited for the world to see this film. It is the female Friday. It's very much like it's an LA story. Two girls got to make it to the end of the day to pay their rent so they don't get kicked out of their house. And, hilarious antics ensue. It's got a really great supporting cast, including Cat Williams, who is hysterical in it. And so that film has been taking up a lot of my time because we have a lightning fast schedule. We wrapped production in the beginning of September and it comes out in January, which, if you know anything about studio filmmaking, is
Yep.
absolutely psychotic schedule.
It is.
So it's been all hands on deck to work on that. So that's coming out then. And then I have two TV shows coming out in the spring. the second season of a show called Survival of the Thickest, which
Okay.
is a 30-minute comedy series, scripted comedy series on Netflix from comedian Michelle Buteau.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very funny show. If you haven't seen the first season, go watch it. I've watched it 3 times, even though I worked on it because it's so funny. And the second season is also great, and also very much feels like a story that needs to be told. That stories that need to be told now. Like the focus is women, people of color, gay people, their stories. It's stories that I think the world needs to hear right now, and it's all done on the backtrack of hysterical comedy. Um, so that will be out in the spring, and then a murder mystery series called Long Bright River, which is based on the best-selling book of the same name. That will be on Peacock, starring Amanda Seyfried. And also, if you're a really, really cool story, lots of twists and turns, a huge twist at the end, if you're into those sorts of things, which I am.
Oh yeah, I am.
Yeah, it's a really, really cool story. I remember reading some of the things that unfold in the story, and my jaw being on the ground. So it has some really great reveals in it. And then not soon, but eventually, I am working on the third season of the Stars show P Valley,
Mm.
which is a really, really music intensive and incredible show. And that will be coming out at some point. I don't know when, but we're working on it now. And because it's so intensive, it takes a long time to make. And
Yeah.
I the people that love that show have been waiting patiently for a long time, and it's coming. We're working on it.
Well, that's great. Seems like you got your hands full, which is always good.
Yes.
Which is
Yes.
really good.
Very much.
But yeah, no, that's great. The Honorable Shyne comes out on Hulu on November 18th, and then
Yep.
um what was it called?
One of them days. One of
One
them
of
days
them
will
days
be
in
in theaters
January, and then
24th.
I'm Long Bright River.
Yeah.
Of all the projects that you mentioned, for me, what stood out the most is Long Bright River, just
Yeah.
because the twists and turns and mystery.
Yeah.
But the others sound definitely interesting. Let's stay in touch.
Okay.
We'll stay in touch with your agent. We'd love to speak to you about your projects when they come out in January and spring and summer,
Awesome. Yeah.
respectively.
Thank
This was
you.
a great conversation. I
This
truly
was a great
appreciate it.
conversation. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed
Yeah.
talking to you.
Likewise, pleasure's all mine. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch.
Okay. Thank you. Take
Take care.
care.